Last night, at my direction, the United States military successfully executed a flawless precision strike that killed the number one terrorist anywhere in the world, Qasem Soleimani.
Qasem Soleimani.
The crisis growing with Iran following that U.S. drone strike
That has huge, unpredictable, and possibly long-term consequences.
Even if you don't know much about Iran and the US, you probably at least know they aren't what you'd call best friends. This is obvious as early as 1979 when Iranian protesters sieged the US Embassy in Tehran and held 52 diplomats for a lengthy 444 days. Or later, when Iran and Iraq fell into war and America tried to eliminate Iran forever by giving Iraq weapons, but instead just further angered Iran, pushing them to carry out devastating terror attacks against the US and their ambassadors in other places in the Middle East, like Beirut and Saudi Arabia, ultimately killing hundreds of US diplomats. The US and Iran have seemingly been at odds forever, battling through sanctions, bombings, restrictions, and most recently the US killing of Iran's highest general. Some say the tensions between Iran and the US are higher than ever, but it wasn't always like this. So why is it happening in the first place? To begin to understand, we have to find where things first went sour. Before 1900, the rest of the world wasn't very interested in the Middle East and its vast, arid deserts. But in May of 1908, some British geologists changed the way the world saw the Middle East forever. These geologists were on a mission to find a new source of something that sits idly under the ground and, if found in large amounts, can lead to enormous prosperity. This mystery substance, of course, being oil. And when the geologists found it in western Iran, they knew they had struck something big. To extract this invaluable resource, the geologists started a company which they called the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, or what you might know better today as BP. After this discovery, Britain quickly started to use oil as a replacement for coal, and the oil business was booming. The world's economy became ever more dependent on oil, leading the British government, who were majority stakeholders in BP, to keep a tight hold on their prize finding. Britain's grip was strong all the way up until 1951, when a new Prime Minister of Iran, Mohammad Mossadegh, had had enough of foreign players taking Iran's riches, and a unanimous vote to take over Iranian oil expelled the British from the region. Forced back on their knees, the enraged British started a worldwide boycott of Iranian oil. But after realizing a boycott wasn't enough to gain back control of Iranian oil, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill convinced the Eisenhower administration to go against cooperation with Iran established by the previous Truman administration. Convinced that Mossadegh was a possible communist during the Cold War era, the CIA and British MI6 overthrew the Iranian government and implanted a pro-Western prime minister who gave more decision power to the pro-Western Shah, who was essentially the king. The returned Shah had positive effects for Britain and the US for 25 years. But when Iran grew unhappy with the absolute monarchy implemented by the US, Iran had a new enemy. Rebels overthrew the Shah and created an Islamic republic headed by both a supreme religious leader and an elected prime minister. Ayatollah Khamenei was the first supreme leader to take power after the revolution in 1979. He quickly renationalized much of the economy and forbade Western influence, which leads us to when the relationship between the US and Iran truly went sour: the attack on the embassy in Tehran. Since then, in 1980, the US and Iran haven't had official diplomatic relations, and they have gone back and forth in the Iran-Iraq war, which was topped off with a US warship accidentally shooting down a commercial Iran airplane, killing 290 civilians. However, after the 9/11 terrorist attack, feelings seemed to change in Iran. Candles were lit outside of the US proxy embassy, and Death to America chants were suspended by the Supreme Leader. A US diplomat even began working with Iran to take down the Taliban. But just 4 months later, President Bush called out Iran in his axis of evil speech, equating them with the likes of North Korea and Iraq as harmful to society. This immediately severed any diplomacy that was happening between the two nations, and Iran was put back on defense. Since that speech, America and US allies have been against Iran and created deals to stop them from developing nuclear weapons. But recently, President Donald Trump has exited those agreements and reimposed tariffs on the nation, reopening old tensions between the powers. Additionally, the US now sees the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is the national Iranian military, as a terrorist organization that has led the US to execute a fatal drone strike of the group's leader, Qasem Soleimani. Now, Iran is left enraged and mourning the dead general. They have already taken action by launching missile attacks at an Iraqi base where Americans are stationed. Now, the world can only anxiously watch to see what happens next in a time that seems like deja vu. If you like this deep dive into this topic, please consider subscribing to see more interesting videos like this. I hope to see you again next time, here on Sparkpass.